See outer circle. Siege of. Oh. That's pretty good. I like that. That probably worked pretty well, actually. I wonder if... Hang on a minute. Yep, Max speaking. Oh, hey, marketing. Yeah, great. Yeah, no, everything's gone great here at the Outer Circle. Can't wait till we go public and can start selling this to the shareholders. What's that? Not meant to talk about the Siege of Terror? Oh. You don't think people will notice that? Well, I've already working on the artwork. This is, I'm putting these things up everywhere. No. It's cool. Yeah, okay. Maybe I can just like slash it out or something. No, just delete entire. Okay. Yep. No. It's cool. It's fine. I'm cool with it. I haven't even got the color right yet. Anyway, for the video, maybe I'll like offset it somewhere out in the side or something. Yeah, no, it's looking good. You don't think people will notice though that I removed the Siege of Terror part? No, they're fucking idiots and they'll buy the product. Okay, cool. No, just checking. All right. Anyway, I'm gonna get back and edit this video up. No, it should be good. Should be good. G'day guys, back at the Outer Circle, and I wonder if that intro is going anywhere. Nothing comes to mind. Alright, let's talk about Ultramarines Legion Praetors. You knew it was coming, let's talk about them. So, as you would know, I just did a showcase on my own Ultramarines, and I showcased the sort of hobby that I'm personally into. I'm all about fostering the story and the narrative and building an army and a theme to that. Now, I like to do a narrow slice of the universe. That's my preferred style, and the very first video in Horus Heresy Getting Started 2.0, which is the current name I have for the series. I don't know if I'll change that over time. Maybe Horus Heresy 2 Electric Boogaloo. That would be pretty fun. Well, the very first video in that series is going to be about taking the bits of background lore and formulating them and creating a force out of that that's thematic. But let's not stray away from the point too far. Ultramarines. Right now we have the most Ultramarine I've ever seen in 30k. Oh boy, I like the model. So let's just start at that point. In fact, I like both the models. So that's a good start. But I've chosen to sort of sit back on talking about them or commenting on the other models, the Imperial Fist range so far. And the reason for that was I didn't want to go into anything remotely negative for a bit. I just wanted to enjoy my hobby for a little bit, sit back and not be the guy who's always got to, break the mood in the room. I don't want that. But enough time has passed where let's tackle it. So, the model is a good model, yes. It's, however, an overdone, overly busy, weird model. It needs improvements. Now, the improvements are not necessarily on the sculpting side of things. I think this model has lots and lots of great parts. But because it has so many intricate parts all together on the one model, it becomes a visual overload. So it's more a question of what I would change. So let's start with Ultramarines Iconography. On the scabbard, we have one symbol, second on the belt buckle, third on the crest on the helmet, a fourth up on top of the backpack on the banner. We then have three more on the leather tridges, or the straps, coming off his waist. We have an additional one on his right shin. That's already 8 in this image. Then we can reasonably safely assume that that is a slightly white U Ultramarine symbol on the shoulder pad on the right hand side, so that takes us up to 9. And of course we have an Ultra symbol on each side of the gladius, so that's already up to 11. And that's before we take into account whatever could be on his right shoulder pad, what could be on the back of the crest on his helmet, what is on his backpack that we can't see because it's obviously on the other side of the model. That's a crapload of iconography. I mean, if he has 2 more Ultramarine icons, he will have the same number of icons as his Legion number. Yeah, not not exactly required, is it? I think anyone would know just looking at him that this is an Ultramarine. So what could you take away from this model and still have it be an Ultramarine? Alright, cut away the entire legs and scabbard. Still undeniably Ultramarine. Cut away the helmet. Still undeniably Ultramarine. Cut away the backpack and just have the U on the belt buckle, the white shoulder pad, and the gladius. Still an Ultramarine. So that's as far down as you could probably boil this model. And it still works. The iconography on the legs, the heavy gilding, is very reminiscent of the old Marnie's Calgar models in 40k. I'm thinking back to like 3rd edition especially, with the way they would wrap around the legs. So I think the helmet, for instance, like on the the Sons of Horus Praetor, it looks very reminiscent, in fact, the image right here, of an Iron Warrior's helmet. I'm not sure why. It's got that the narrow, elongated eye slits are very much like the Iron Warriors' glaring eyes on their Legion icon, as well as the vertical slits in the grille on the face. Why that particular helmet's a bit strange. I think it probably would work better with just a more traditional Mark II, 3, or 4 helmet. But even the armor itself is a bit of a stylistic mashup. It seems to have some of the leg cabling of something like Mark V. You can see it on the upper legs there. And he has little tassets on the thighs, like on something like the modern Primaris armors, for example. So strange there. The big Judge Dredd eagle on the left shoulder pad is seen all over the Invictus Suzerain. Or Suzerain, however you pronounce it. So it's a common motif, and like I said, I don't dislike the model. There is no part on this model I hate. It's more just that the sheer amount of stuff on this model is a bit overdone. Whether it's Graham Norton's bare head on the right there, or whether it's the rest of him, I don't know. But we'll say this is at about an 11 or a 12 out of 10 for the amount of iconography you want to have, and we could bring it down a few levels, and it would be much, much better for it, because this is just polluted with the amount of detail. Not a bad model, but rein it in. Just rein it in 2 or 3 notches. Now, the Cataphracti Praetor. I like this one quite a lot as well. It could be a Legatine axe, or a Legatine or Legatine axe. I'm not sure on pronunciation, but that works really well, I think, on the model. It is a big, giant axe. Not necessarily the best choice for a model in Terminator armor. If you have access to something like a Chain Fist on a HQ, that might be a better option to take, for example. The iconography is nowhere near as heavily Ultramarine. I like the fact that on the belt buckle strapping, the tridges, we have a single U and just a bunch of old school little skulls hanging off it. That's a neat little touch. And the laurel wreath, and painted green, not just gold, around the shin, the belt buckle, and on the cloak. Those are really neat touches as well. It goes very much back to sort of an older style of painting. Now, they couldn't leave well enough alone with the iconography. He's still got a symbol on the chest. He's still got the 2 little sling on the little purity seals under the Bessigue. That's that little shield on the shoulder. And of course, all the strapping around the shoulders is just covered in little U's, but you can kind of get away with it because the scale of the model, being Cataphracti, being much larger than Power Armor, it blends in a lot better to the overall design. It's not just loud and proud out in front of everything. The weapon, I like that style of combi weapon. It's very common in the Horus Heresy, although not on Terminators. That's the kind of combi weapon you see on Power Armor. Terminators tend to, in the Heresy, have side-by-side weapons. It's not a bad thing at all. I like that design. And I really like the way the shoulder pads are styled, with the eagle laying flat across the shoulder pad, embossed up from the surface, but not sticking a mile up into the air, is really neat. The one thing it could probably do without is the little skull and ultra symbol on top of the carapace of the Terminator. That could just be removed, maybe replace it with a really simple iron halo. or something. But the fact is, he's in Terminator armor. He has a built-in 4+ invulnerable save, which is what our Halo provides in Heresy. Therefore, there'd be no benefit to taking such war gear on him. So I would say, just leave it blank on top. Leave it empty. If you're going to do anything on top, maybe some kind of banner, like an old school Terminator Captain, think 3rd edition. That could look quite neat. Yeah, so that's what I have to say on these guys. If we nip on over to Forge World Store, I did briefly talk about these guys the other day, but we have the Imperial Fist Legion Praetor, who is, I like both of these as well. It's interesting that their poses actually mirror one another. This guy is running forward with the sword in the right hand, left arm out in front, and this guy's the opposite. Perfect opposites. So I don't know that they need the same pose. They're both running the same way, running to one another's arms. But the models are nice. The weapons are cool. I like the fact they've gone for that sort of Templar Brethren style of sword. I'm not so sure how I feel about the beaten metal on the greaves. So you can see there's this real dimpled metal pattern on the side of the leg, on the side of the greave or shin guard. The same thing goes up the upper thighs, and it goes onto the sides of the chest. I'm a bit iffy on that one. That was very much that sort of beaten pattern came in on the Ebon Kashyyyk. So I'll open it up in another tab. Really, Forge World? Nothing. No hits for Ebon Kashyyyk. Okay. Don't you love it when your website just doesn't work? Oh, wow. They're not even on the website currently. Yeah, top work, Forge World. Okay, well, we have their Leviathan Dreadnought, and we've got the Hizagan Land Speeders, so we'll use those as examples. You can see here on the hull that beaten metal, which is very reminiscent of sort of ancient Chinese, northern Indian, like say Rajput, Sikh, Mongolian, that sort of Central Asian steppe. They have a lot of beaten metal. And it works really well for these guys because that's sort of their lineage or the cultural artwork they've drawn from in order to look at these guys. And so it's a little bit weird seeing that carried over here onto essentially some Germanic Templars, which is kind of what the Imperial Fists are in a lot of ways. So not a bad stylistic choice at all. I don't think it brings the model down. I just think it doesn't quite fit with my own personal image of what that Legion is. And it just sort of, it feels like they did it just to borrow a little detail and that they took it from these guys. But yeah, it doesn't hurt the model for it. I like the little bit of filigree on the van braces, the wrist armor. Even the little bit just tucked away into the corner on the shoulder pad looks great. Yeah, overall, really nice models. And of course, the other Terminator here. So many tactical rocks. It's just a base covered in them now. It's getting a bit ridiculous. Of course, they haven't fixed this problem either. He's still in Cataphractii pattern Terminator armor. I can quite assure you, this is not Cataphractii pattern Terminator armor. And you know what? I will Terminator. So let's see if we can spot the difference here. Okay, Tartarus on the left and the Blood Angel. Cataphractii on the right on the Dark Angel. What we've got here. Tartarus Praetor for the Word Bearers. Tartarus Praetor for the Night Lords. Indomitus pattern for the World Eaters, Khorne Terminator Lords of War. Cataphractii for the Varagia. Cataphractii for the Justirian. Tartarus for the Phoenix Terminators. Aquilon pattern for the Custodes Aquilon Terminators. It's in the name. Tartarus on the Death Shroud. You can see a pattern forming here. Okay? Night Lords Kontakar. They're in Tartarus. Thousand Sons Sekhmet. Cataphractii. You know, different armor types. They exist, and in Heresy they have rather different rules, so it's very important. For example, Tartarus armor can overwatch. That's important, the ability to shoot at someone who's charging you. That can save your butt, especially in something like Zone Mortalis, where you can overwatch at full initiative if you pass an initiative test. Tartarus can also run down enemy units. So you lose a combat with them, they can chase you down and wipe out your squad. They can also run. So if you deep strike them in, for example, which is something Imperial Fists do have access to, they can actually run and spread out so they don't just get hit by a Vindicator and all killed in the next turn. Cataphracti loses every single one of those things but gains a better invulnerable save. Not great trade-off in my world, but is what it is. So these are things to be cognizant of because they have game-affecting results, and it's further exacerbated by the fact that some legions have Terminators and Terminator HQs who should be, going with those squads or working with them, and they have different marks of armor, which makes things more difficult for the player who's buying into this, especially if they're new to the Horus Heresy and they don't understand it because, I don't know, maybe the only guy who makes getting started in Horus Heresy videos is Mr. Circle. And a lot of people get warned away from going to watch Mr. Circle's content, rightfully so. And they don't realise that these have effects, and so they buy their Blood Angels, Praetor, and Terminator armor, and they chuck him in with a squad of Crimson Paladins who are in Cataphracti armor, and they win their close combat, and they realise they can't run down the squad they just beat. And so the Blood Angels are left sitting out in the open next turn or get shot to death. That happens, that's a thing. It's just something to be aware of. Anyway, let's talk something more important now. So I brought up this little joke before, Horus Heresy Siege of Terror. Here's the payoff. As you can see, they released the two models, the Imperial Fist Praetors, with the Horus Heresy _ Siege of Terror at the start. Then they've quickly got rid of that part, and then they reissued an upload when people pointed it out, and they just put the Horus Heresy in there, and it's a different font and everything. They didn't just remove the Siege of Terror part, they actually used a different size font in a different location. So that was a concerted effort. There's two different versions of the same artwork. Speculation, Siege of Terror is the goal that they're going for with their next update or version of the Horus Heresy. Fine, great, I don't care. That's not where my problems lie necessarily with any of my qualms with the Horus Heresy. In fact, is not about what version of it or where the battles are located. My only qualm with doing a Siege of Terror thing and shoehorning every single legion into it is, well, frankly, not every single legion was there, and there are other situations, such as skirmish battles in the Age of Darkness, that would much better suit the goal of being able to be inclusive of every legion. But, ignoring that fact, it's quite the blunder putting it up in this way. Essentially, you've revealed your hand, and not in the positive way. Because you've gone back on it rather than doubling down on it and just leaving it up there and letting people speculate and have a bit of fun. You just pulled it and went, oh, well, you're not meant to know that yet. But here's the thing, as I've noted before, there is no need for the radio silence. There is no competing game system making tons and tons of alternate Horus Heresy miniatures. Sure, there are things you can proxy and kit bash and things like that, but anyone going to Warhammer World's not going to be doing that, most likely. They're not going to rock up with a bunch of Anvil Industries miniatures, rocking Cromlech and Puppets War parts or something, led by a Cyborg Primarch, or whatever they have. Very unlikely to happen at somewhere like Warhammer World. So there's no need to keep the plans secret. Just because the marketing people want to keep it on the down low so that they can sell a bunch of, Kill Team, Octarius stuff this month. Whatever. It just seems a bit silly to me. Let people know what you're doing so they can pre-plan ahead, save up money to buy the damn box. Let them have a little hope that you're doing something interesting, creative with the system, and that'll be a great thing. That's more valuable to me. So, moving on, let's get a little bit more negative. This happened. So, for those who don't know, Aaron Dembski-Bowden is a novel writer at Black Library. He does other novels as well. But he's had this to say today over on Twitter. Now, if there's one place you like getting yourself in trouble, it's Twitter. Lots of people do it. I don't even use Twitter because I don't like it. There's a tiny but vocal percentage of Horus Heresy and the Old World fans who genuinely believe they're keeping it real, with no idea how repulsive and unbearable they're making the fandom. Stewing your love of something in sneering derision of everything else isn't passion. Okay. Who's that directed at? I don't think it applies to me, personally, but I'm curious about who it does apply to. Is there some secret sect of players out there who are just like, no, you cannot be in this thing? Because I haven't seen it. I know personally I've gone out of my way to make videos on how to get into the Horus Heresy, right down to different models you can use for conversions as base miniatures, different places you can go to get parts for models, the types of models available even within Games Workshop and Forge World that will achieve the same job as something else you want to do. So I've gone out of my way to guide people this way, but I've also been highly critical of the company where they have made some very questionable decisions. For example, something that isn't required might be releasing an additional Sons of Horus character, because we've got a banner bearer now who came in a blister pack with another guy. There's also Malagos model. There's also this other new Praetor with the Iron Warriors looking head. There's Garviel Loken, there's Ezekiel Abaddon, and that right there is already 6 characters in resin. Okay? This is one example of a problem. And then on the other hand, you have a legion like, say, the Raven Guard, who have no characters. Or the Salamanders, who have no characters. Or you have the Iron Warriors, who only ever got Narek Dragur, who was a limited Forge World event-only character, and he was a Praevian consul. He wasn't one of the main named special characters such as Erasmus Golg, or, I don't know, an Iron Warrior's Warsmith, or Iron Warrior Loyalist Keir Valen. Okay, so there's some cool characters to pick from, but they didn't pick any of those. Even the Ultramarines don't have any special characters, although at least they're getting some HQs now. You've got the Iron Hands. The Iron Hands have an Iron Father, yes, but they have nothing else when it comes to characters. No Gabriel Santor, no Ortec Moore, no, who's the guy who in all the novels, Shadrach Medicine. Okay, so a lot of legions neglected over on one side, some legions having 7 special characters on another side. So that's quite a problem, and pointing that out is not being repulsive and unbearable. Then you've got the gatekeeping aspects of the hobby. Well, gatekeeping exists for a reason. You shouldn't just be inclusive of everyone just for the sake of inclusivity's sake. Because there are some people who are genuinely toxic on the other end of the spectrum, and you don't need to support or enable that behaviour. Now, there's a fine line between negative and positive gatekeeping, but there is a line there. The examples I like to cite is something like a sport. Okay, let's say you play tennis. Tennis says you have to have a certain type of ball, you play on a certain size of court, and you play with a certain type of racket. Okay, it's got to fit within certain parameters. And that's how the game is played. It's not saying you can't play a different game that is like that, like hit a softball around instead of a tennis ball. Probably would hurt your wrist a lot, but, you could do it. So you could do that. Okay, maybe you use a cricket bat instead of a tennis racket. Perfectly acceptable. But at that point, the game you're playing is no longer tennis. It's the same kind of thing with the Horus Heresy. You can change up things. You can have Primaris Marines as your Sons of Horus, for instance. Fine, I don't care if you do that. I had a problem with when that particular thing did happen, and Games Workshop put it in their magazine and said, this is a Horus Heresy army. It's like, no, that's not a Horus Heresy army. That's a Primaris 40k army. That's what the guy built it as. That's what the guy plays it as. He just likes the Horus Heresy paint scheme. Why don't you just call it that? Just say, this is a 40k army in a Horus Heresy paint scheme. I wouldn't have said a fucking thing about it, because it wouldn't matter. It doesn't matter in the scheme of things. The only real gatekeeping that I think exists in the community is the hobby is kind of sacrosanct to some degree, in that we want to play games and we want to enjoy them. Let's say you have a fun gaming group, for example, and in that fun gaming group, it's exactly that. Everyone has a great time. You're always experimenting, trying out different armies, lots of builds. Nobody's playing to win necessarily. You will win games, but you're not going out of your way to try and win the games. You're just playing with what you have and having fun. And some of the lists are just silly that you come up with. And then along comes a guy and he wants to join your gaming group, and he's just a total neckbeard. Okay, let's ignore the fact that maybe his personality is completely horrible. Maybe he stinks. It doesn't really matter. We'll focus on the gameplay. What if that person, every time they come out, they play a really hard list? It's just brutal to play against and not enjoyable to be on the receiving end of. And that guy just keeps coming up and joins in your group. Nobody invited him. He just comes in and he starts playing. And every time he plays, he's just an absolute rules lawyer. And he calls you on the most minute of things, like you move your model, and he's like, no, that was 6 1/4 inches you moved, take that model back. But then when he moves his models, he's moving them like 7, 8 inches instead of 6 inches. Okay, that's going to wear pretty fucking thin pretty quickly in the group. And you don't just kick a person like that out of the group. I think we all have been in the situation with a person like that. And we try and coach them. We try and rein them in a little bit. We say, hey, just relax. It's a friendly game. We're not playing for sheep stations. We're just trying to have fun here. So let's just calm down a little bit. Let's not worry about that stuff. It's just a fun game. Maybe you don't need to play your Magnus Mortarian double list every time we go out and play or something. Why don't you try Tactical Squad for a change? That might be fun. You're not telling them they have to do these things. You're just saying, maybe you could do this for the sake of the other players. Look after their feelings. And if this person refuses to do that, and you say, look, we just don't want to play you, have you gatekept negatively? No. You have tried to rehabilitate that person's, personality, and failed. And so when you reach an impasse, rather than being a prick to them, you've just said, look, we'd prefer it if maybe you just go and find a group of people who are more like-minded like you are, and you go over there and play with them. That is not negative gatekeeping. That is the most positive form of gatekeeping I can think of. Okay? And I see it all the time. I think most of us have seen that. That is not what Aaron's talking about here, though. I think he sees a situation like that, and he's come up with his own belief of what it is. I don't know. I don't know if he goes and plays the local gaming club, or he feels like he's being kept out. Maybe he feels like this channel, or channels like it, are keeping people out. I don't think so. I think I'm pretty down the line with my opinions, and try to give everyone the most possible information so they know exactly what I'm thinking and why I'm thinking it. But he follows it up with this tweet. This has obviously just hit a number on the Old World and Horus Heresy groups, as there's a sudden influx of replies and inbox messages misreading it as, you have to like Age of Sigmar or whatever. It's not about normal people liking or disliking stuff. It's about, well, it's clear who's it about. No, it's not. That's the problem. What's happened here is you have a type of virtue signaling, the most toxic kind of virtue signaling, and that's what this is. It's the kind where he's passive-aggressively labelled a group of people a certain way. He's just said that Horus Heresy and Old World fans, a tiny but vocal percentage of them, believe they're keeping it real and have no idea how repulsive and unbearable they're making it for the fandom. Well, who's the arbitrary person who decides that? Who decides what's repulsive and unbearable? I mean, he's decided what it is. Just some fucking author who seems to know less about the game than most people I know who play the game, but that's neither here nor there. In fact, that's an attack by me. I shouldn't really do that. But you're not clear about who it's about. Instead, you've just opened the floodgates, and that's exactly what I saw take place. By saying that you know who it's about, or, it's people in these particular groups, the Old World and Horus Heresy, as if there's no super toxic players in 40k, like you really gonna pull that shit? That 40k is not full of really toxic neckbeards? Okay, whatever. The fact that you're doing that, but not being specific, name this channel, I don't care. At least you're naming someone in that situation. But the fact that you're not naming anyone has left the gates open for anyone to, just like the Warhammer community post, Warhammer is for everyone, you won't be missed. You've left a big open box there that anyone of a certain mental persuasion will be able to fit anyone they disagree with into that box. So they can turn around and say, you know what, I think that person's toxic. You're exactly the person that Aaron Dembski Bowden was talking about. and they'll stick them in that box. And he hasn't labelled them as such, and maybe they aren't. But now the community, or some people within it, have labelled them as such, and it becomes this toxic situation of people calling one another toxic. Now, you're the reason I don't play Horus Heresy with my 40k Space Marines. Well, who the fuck are you to play 40k Space Marines in Horus Heresy? Maybe we don't want that. Or who are you to stop me from playing the Horus Heresy? We're not. We just don't want you to play with us, etc., etc. You can see how this is not good for anyone. So, top work on sticking your foot in on that one. I just don't think this twit should be tweeting. Put his foot in it, massively. At the end of the day, despite the fact I've spoken about this quite a bit, I think there is a place for fucking gatekeeping. It's needed. It's required. As I said, sports have it. All sorts of hobbies have it. There is such a thing as bad gatekeeping, and there is such a thing as good gatekeeping, and there is a difference between the two. There are wrong ways to exclude people and wrong reasons to exclude people. It's all about being adults and finding the correct balance of the two. Gatekeep people for the correct reasons, okay? And like with my video on the Ultramarines the other day, I want to be fostering those kind of things. I don't want to be sitting here going, you're not allowed to play the game, because I want people to play the game. I want to encourage that. What I don't need, though, is people who want to come in, join our community, this fantastic Horus Heresy community globally, who puts so much more passion into their armies than anything you see going on in 40k. Okay, yeah, there's the odd exception in 40k, but look, one player in a million does not make the rule, okay? The Horus Heresy is consistently full of lore-accurate armies painted to high standards using period-accurate armors and vehicles. That's just the hobby that's grown up around it. And that originally probably began with the fact that over at Forge World, where this originated, it was more expensive models designed for the more sort of senior hobbyist, the more experienced hobbyist who was willing to work with things like resin and more difficult to make parts versus the easy-to-use plastic kits of Games Workshop. It naturally drew in that type of hobbyist. And so that hobbyist mentality is probably what has stuck with the Horus Heresy. And we treat it like a historical game. And we foster that. We try and say, like, look, this is not about building an army to win tournaments. The whole point of playing Horus Heresy is to build an army that you enjoy playing, that tells a story and a theme, and you can share that story with the people around you. You can all sit there and go, wow, that's a really good story. That's really cool. I didn't know that, which is a heap of the story for the Ultramarines Nemesis chapter, the 22nd chapter of the Ultramarines Legion that I spoke about the other day. People loved hearing that story. It was all through the comments. People going, I didn't know a thing about this. This is so cool. And that's the great thing about Heresy. You don't tend to see that in 40k. It's not that it doesn't exist. It's just that it's not fostered in 40k outside of at least local gaming groups. Especially doesn't exist in the tournament scene. And there's nothing wrong with the tournament scene existing and that mentality of not building armies to be fun, but building armies to win. That's perfectly fine. And we're not going to take that away from that community, but we don't need that mindset being pushed into the Horus Heresy community. If you want to make a Horus Heresy community that's all about just using whatever models, doesn't care about being accurate to the fluff, they just want to use our game system as a building base to have tournaments, you're welcome to do it. Just don't include me. That's all. I don't mind. Like, honestly, go for it. But by the same token, don't tell me I have to appreciate or I have to like it. I don't have to do shit. Okay? So let's be clear on that. And yeah, passive-aggressive comments from an author, like, you know, come over to my world for a bit, Aaron. Aaron. Here's my challenge to you. You write good lore. You write interesting stories. You're a Black Library author. You've written some of my favourite Black Library novels, like Betrayer. You've also written some of my most hated, like Master of Mankind, but that's neither here nor there. We don't always win. Come over to the Horus Heresy side of things. Build an army accurate to the background that you wrote and paint it. It doesn't need to be 10 out of 10 top tier painting. I don't care. All I care about is effort. Put some effort into that army. You come in and you've shown something great. I will support that passion, okay? I get so many PMs from people on Instagram, on Facebook, that just want to show miniatures to me. And I love seeing it. And I'm always there saying, people like, it's great. I'm glad you're inspired to do this thing. You know, that's awesome. Because I want to see it. Okay? But by the same token, don't come over here and be like, you're doing heresy wrong and you're coming to me. Well, it doesn't work like that. You know? Anyway, we've talked about it enough.
My work is done here.
What do you mean your work is done? You didn't do anything.
Didn't I?
The one thing I'll leave you with today is the fact that I'm basically Nostradamus. I can see into the future. Last year, I did a video. The video was on the Special Snowflake, I believe it was called. It was about the fact that Primaris Marines and Marines in general are just getting so much crap. So many new miniatures. And then I named a bunch of factions that weren't. I think it was a pretty good video. And I made a prediction in there based on a few trends I was seeing. Pretty obvious trends to me at the time, which is why I so sarcastically, and I mean very sarcastically, commented upon it. And I'll play you that clip now with my predictions. And I'll point a few things out in that clip. And we'll see what you think. Make with the outer circle. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all on the next one. Or trying to ham-handedly fist things into different holes where there are no holes. They'll go, oh geez, now we've got plasma and melter squads. Well, we're gonna need flamers. And there'll be Primaris, I don't know, pyro blasters or something, you know. And it'll be a Primaris unit all armed with long-ass flamethrowers to go with the fact that, hey, they've got melter guns, they've got plasma, whoa!
Wow.